But just to touch on the Caitlin Clark of it all, listen, I think the way that I'm looking at this, no, Caitlin didn't win. It's why she's not number one. I think going to the national championship game 2 years in a row, basically playing big in every big game, hitting every big shot in every big moment, there's something to that, clearly. Raising the level of your teams, there's something this kid is obviously special, definitely one of the greatest of all time.
Because Caitlin Clark didn't win a championship, ESPN boldly asserted that she isn't even among the best 5 women's collegiate basketball players of all time.
Connect. The other day, ESPN embarrassed itself again by trying to dismiss Caitlin Clark, but not dismissing her outright. First, ESPN used Caitlin Clark to try to set her up as if they were acknowledging her greatness in college basketball. But then ESPN flipped the script and then went on to try to diminish her. Notice I said try.
However, WNBA legend Sue Bird has finally joined the conversation with a viewpoint so obvious and sensible that it puts an end to any disputes. Her interpretation of Clark's legacy not only questions, but also totally destroys ESPN's rankings. The best WNBA point guard of all time just resolved the Caitlin Clark controversy with a fantastic revelation that no one anticipated.
Because ESPN had a list that they sold around Caitlin Clark's name, but then took her out of the top 5. And now Sue Bird has weighed in saying you have to have Clark at least top 3, because who would you pick on your team? Not to mention her accolades. Now, you don't have to have her first, of course, and it's incredibly impressive what, say, Brianna Stewart did, winning 4 championships at UConn, or what Cheryl Miller did in her day. You know, there are plenty of late, Diana Taurasi, so many on the list, right? But at the same time, you know, Caitlin Clark elevated Iowa.
Basketball fans worldwide were shocked to discover Caitlin Clark missing from the top 5 on ESPN's ranking of the greatest women's collegiate basketball players of all time. They gave the excuse that she had never won a championship, and that was the end of their argument.
Clark broke the all-time scoring record, led the country in points and assists, and obviously passes the eye test, not to mention the impact test. So I think you can argue her as number 1, but it's really tough to just dismiss her and take her off the list. And I think the lack of the championship is the only thing anybody can latch onto.
However, let's take a moment to be honest. Despite not having a roster full of McDonald's All-Americans, Caitlin Clark's resume speaks for itself. She is the all-time leading scorer in NCAA Division I basketball, not just in women's basketball, but in all of NCAA Division I. She broke 3-point and assist records, and her Iowa Hawkeyes made back-to-back appearances in championship games. However, ESPN somehow decided that without a championship ring, Clark's incredible individual accomplishments aren't enough. It's so cold it could freeze the sun.
I think when I really look at lists like this, it's kind of like, do you go based on just resume, or do you go based on, if we had a draft, who would you take? And there's no way you're not taking Caitlin Clark in the top 5. And to me, there's no way you're not taking her in the top 3. So, and that's not, you know, a knock on anybody else. I just think that's the reality of it.
Enter the suburb 4 times. WNBA champion, 5-time Olympic gold medalist, and regarded by many as one of the best point guards in basketball history, Sub's remarks about Caitlin Clark have completely changed the way that people talk about the game. In a video that is currently going viral, she completely reframed how we should measure greatness in college basketball. Let me share exactly what she said, just a touch on the Caitlin Clark of it all. From my perspective, the reason Caitlin didn't win is why she's not number 1. Going to the national championship game 2 years in a row, essentially playing big in every big game, hitting every big shot, and in every big moment, seems to me to indicate that your teams are performing at a higher level. This kid is undoubtedly unique and among the best of all time, but then Sue Bird's mic drop moment was revealed. When I truly look at lists like this, I think it's more like, do you choose based on your resume alone, or do you choose based on who you would choose if we had a draft? There's no way you wouldn't choose Caitlin Clark in the top 5, and in my opinion, there's no way you wouldn't choose her in the top 3, so that's not a slight on anyone else. That's just the truth, in my opinion, and this viewpoint is excellent because it cuts through all the clutter. Subir recently presented the ultimate litmus test for greatness. If you were selecting the greatest college athletes of all time, would you select Caitlin Clark in your top 5 or top 3? The answer is definitely yes. Consider what this means. Bird isn't discounting titles. She admits that Clark wouldn't be number 1 without one, but she also provides important background that ESPN totally overlooked: the fact that brilliance isn't solely determined by prizes. Bird's draft exam is brilliant because it compels us to assess players not just on the basis of team achievements, but also on their true effect and talent. Even the best basketball player cannot win titles by himself because the game is played as a team with 5 players on the court. We'd likely be talking about multiple championships if Caitlin Clark had played for Dawn Staley at South Carolina or Gino Ora at UConn, with their pipeline of 5-star recruits, but she decided to stay in her home state and change the Iowa program instead. Clark took a team with less talent than powerhouses like UConn, South Carolina, and LSU, and still managed to reach consecutive championship games. The fact that Bird's take is from someone who understands what it takes to succeed at the greatest level, not just any commentator or social media star, is what makes it so potent. Sue Bird is an Olympic gold medalist, a champion at every level, and she is adamant that Caitlin Clark is unquestionably in the top 5, if not the top 3. Let's put Bird's test into practice. Suppose you were selecting the top 5 college players of all time. Would you really leave Caitlin Clark off that list? Let's think about who else might be mentioned. At UConn, Breanna Stewart achieved a unique feat by winning 4 titles and consistently being awarded the final for Most Outstanding Player. She is definitely on the list. At USC, Cheryl Miller transformed women's basketball by winning 3 Naismith Awards and 2 titles. Awards for Player of the Year, she is a lock. Diana Taurasi led UConn to 3 straight titles and won the 2003 Naismith Player of the Year award. She is mentioned in the Chammy Holdsclaw deserves to be included because she won 3 consecutive championships at Tennessee and was named Naismith Player of the Year twice. Maya Emo gathered 3 Wade trophies and won 2 titles at UConn. These players all have championship pedigrees and individual accolades, but this is where Bird's viewpoint becomes extremely valuable. If you had to choose 5 players in their college prime, would you really pick them all? She is a contender for awards as the best player in women's college basketball. Caitlin Clark is a revolutionary player because of her unmatched offensive variety, which includes her ability to score from wherever on the court, her court vision, her passing ability, and her clutch performance. She transformed the way women's collegiate basketball is played, watched, and valued. Her talent went beyond simply putting up numbers. This important criterion is overlooked by the ESPN list, which appears to consider titles as the final test of brilliance. As a result, their ranking has received a lot of criticism from fans and commentators, and now legends such as Sue Bird. The dilemma raised by ESPN's criteria is whether a member of a championship team is superior to a transcendent superstar. If not, we don't place Dirk Pfizer 5 NBA titles above Allen Iverson, but Robert Haar has 7 more than Charles Barkley, who has 0. No titles. The most perplexing aspect of ESPN's position is the inconsistency. They have never applied this strict championship or bust criterion to men's basketball. Individual greatness and team success are intertwined, but different birds realize this. Pete Maravich never advanced past the first round of the NCAA tournament, but he is frequently mentioned as one of the best collegiate players of all time due to his indisputable individual brilliance. Caitlin Clark should be held to the same standard. Let's also discuss Clark's influence. Beyond the numbers, Clark has completely changed the face of women's basketball. Since the championship game between Iowa and South Carolina, attendance records, broadcast ratings, and social media participation have all increased dramatically. Drew 18.7 million people, more than most NBA games, and even some NFL playoff games, even though Bird didn't specifically mention titles in his speech. Even South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley, who defeated Clark's Iowa team in the championship game, recognized Clark's transcendent impact. It's important to remember that impact is another essential metric of greatness, and by that metric, No player in women's college basketball history has done more to raise the sport's profile and popularity. The coach who stopped Clark from winning a title acknowledges Caitlin's transcendent impact on our game, which is beyond words. She has drawn in viewers who had never paid much attention to women's basketball. Maybe ESPN should pay attention. This returns us to Sue Bird's insightful viewpoint. What makes Bird's take so refreshing is that it doesn't minimize the accomplishments of other great players. She's not saying that championships don't matter. She's not saying that Clark is unquestionably the greatest ever. She's just saying that by any reasonable measure, Caitlin Clark belongs in the top 5, probably the top 3. The draft test cuts through all the noise, all the metrics, and all the subjective criteria and asks a straightforward question. If talent is the measure, is she one of the 5 best or one of the 3 best? The response to Bird's remarks has been overwhelmingly favorable, with both fans and commentators applauding her for adding clarity to a contentious and tribal discussion. Her point of view is compelling because, as Bird stated, it feels balanced, honest, and grounded in basketball knowledge. That's not a slight on anyone else. I just believe that's the truth. The draft test's simplicity is what makes it so effective. It forces us to be honest about the impact and greatness of talent without getting bogged down in the minutiae of particular criteria or subjective rankings. So let's ask ESPN and anyone else who would pass on Caitlin Clark if you were drafting the top 5 greatest college basketball players of all time in their prime. Would you really let her fall outside the top 5? The honest response is no. You would pick her just like Sue Bird would, and that settles the argument. Clark's legacy at Iowa extends beyond her impressive individual stats, which include an average of 31.6 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 8.9 assists in her senior season. More significantly, she turned a program that had never advanced to the Final Four into a contender for the national championship. She also improved her teammates, making everyone around her better. She gave her best performance during the most crucial moments, such as her 41-point triple-double against Louisville in the Elite Eight. But these accomplishments don't go unnoticed because South Carolina and LSU had more talented rosters and won the final games. The fact that basketball is a team sport doesn't lessen Clark's greatness. Sue Bird's straightforward yet insightful viewpoint serves as a reminder of what greatness truly looks like. It's not just about the hardware, but also about the effect, talent, and transforming power. If I could pick any college athlete in their prime, would Caitlin Clark be on my shortlist? The answer is yes, which is why ESPN's list doesn't pass the common sense test of basketball. Bird's viewpoint also emphasizes a crucial point. The best players elevate their teams above what their skill level would indicate is feasible. Though consistently outclassed in terms of raw talent, Clark led Iowa to consecutive national championship games by elevating her team through her play, leadership, and competitive fire. That's what the truly great ones do. They don't just compile impressive statistics, they improve everyone around them, change the game, set new standards, and inspire future generations with each of these actions. Unquestionably, one of the best collegiate basketball players of all time, Caitlin Clark should be in the top 5 and most likely in the top 3. Basketball fans notice it, as does Sue Bird. As Bird stated, this isn't about dismissing other great players. Rather, it's about accepting the fact that is directly in front of us. The only people who don't seem to see it are the people at ESPN, who created their list with a false assumption. The next time someone tries to argue that Caitlin Clark shouldn't be considered one of the all-time greats because she never won a championship, Sue Bird's straightforward question, would you really pass on Caitlin Clark if you were drafting the 5 greatest college players ever? Settles the debate. Sue Bird simply changed the game once more, not on the court, but in how we define greatness. If you're selecting the best college players ever, her flawless interpretation of Caitlin Clark doesn't just put an end to the argument, it completely reframes it. If you liked this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe for more sports analysis that breaks through the clutter. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Would you pick Caitlin Clark in your all-time draft? See you in the upcoming video.